Okay, vlog day 16, part 2. So back to what I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted by my 15-minute time on YouTube. So the muscle men would they would go into the sermon, and then they would do the active strength, and then they would come back to the sermon and express, how it related to the sermon. And Christopher didn't understand that, so I kept having to explain it to him. And the main theme was John 3:16, for God so loved the world. I think it's he gave his he gave his only son, something like that. So that was the thing. But he kept saying, for God so loved, and then everybody in the audience was supposed to shout out their own name, and then he would yell it again, for God so loved, and everyone yelled out their own name, and then he would say, for God so loved you, and blah, blah, blah. He would go on that. So Christopher, I kept having to explain to him what they were talking about. So, throughout the show, every time they would perform a feat of strength, of course they would say, all right, help him out, he needs your help. And people would be applauding and clapping and screaming and whatever. And Christopher understood, yeah, we're supposed to clap for that. But at other times, they would be talking about how Jesus did something or how God does something. And people would be clapping and showing their praise. And he was like, do I clap? Am I supposed to clap? And so I would explain to him, this is why they're clapping. They're clapping because Jesus does this for them. And so I wouldn't tell him yes or no, you clap. I would just explain to him why they were clapping and let him make the decision on his own whether or not to clap. And he had a lot of questions. Like, it was very confusing to him, and he didn't understand why people believed some of the things that they were saying. And when he asked me questions, I give him fact-based answers. This is what their Bible says. This is what they believe. This is what they're raised with. That's why they believe that. That they've read their Bible or they've been to church or whatever, and they've come to these conclusions. That's what their belief is. He still doesn't understand it. He is still very much agnostic as of today. But he does have a lot of questions. He doesn't understand why they were saying some of the things that they were saying. And so the last main thing, he kept saying, do I clap? Do I clap? And so I would just explain to him why they were clapping, and he would clap or not. So two things, two main things happened. So they're breaking all the boards, and they're blowing up hot water balloons just by blowing into them and all these different things. So they've got, wood and stone and shit all over the stage. And so they say they're going to take a little break, and they're cleaning up the stage, and they're sweeping everything up, and the preacher's still going on with the sermon. Now, the preacher is a muscle man, mind you. He's the drummer of the band, and he is one of the muscle men. So he's going on, and he's still praying and preaching, and we saw some kids lined up on stage, and the people that were cleaning up the stage had been passing out. Oh, God, shit, I didn't look at the time when I restarted. Okay. So they had been cleaning up the stage, and they had been giving out some of the boards that had been broken, some of the pieces of stone that had been broken. They were ripping phone books in half, and they had thrown some of that out into the audience, and they were giving some of that away. And so we thought that there were a bunch of kids starting to line up at the base of the stage, and I thought it was because they were giving away the boards and stone. So I told Christopher, if you want a piece of it, go ahead on up there and get a piece of it, and that way we could get it autographed. Because after the show, you could get an autograph by all the muscle men. So he goes and he stands up in line, and people start to move away, and I just assumed that they were handed their wood and they could leave. And Christopher was standing there, and he was waiting and waiting, and I saw him say, excuse me, and he was asking about the wood, and the guy said, we only need 4. And Christopher didn't understand what he was talking about, but he said, okay. So he came on back and sat down, and I said, well, they're throwing all of that outside, so I'm sure you could have a piece of it later on. We'll make sure to get you a piece. Well, we realized what the 4 was. He had misheard. It was, we only need 4. They were lining the kids up because they were using them in part of the act. So they come back to the sermon, and an act of strength was that they have this, those balance things. It's like the cups, and you fill them equally, and then it's a balanced scale. So it was this big platform, and it was like 2 flat square platforms with a T-bar in it, and the T-bar went across the guy's shoulders, and then he could carry the big platform across the floor. So the thing was, And Jesus said, suffer as little children or something like that. And Christopher's like, why should children suffer? But anyway, that's a side point. I thought it was funny. So they had 4 kids stand on the platform, and the guy carried it back and forth across the stage. And there was, Jesus isn't just for children, Jesus is for teenagers. And then they had 2 teenagers stand on the thing, and the guy carried him across the stage. And then, it's for adults too, and then 2 adults were carried across the stage. So then he was like, all of a sudden, oh, they only needed 4. I'm glad I didn't stay up there. Because he does not like to be in the spotlight like that. So that was one thing. And then the final thing was they laid a guy on the bed of nails, and then they laid another bed of nails on top of him, and then they laid another guy on top of that, and then that guy bench pressed a 300-pound log of wood. And then they peeled everything off. They left the first guy laying on the bed of nails, covered him with a black sheet. And that was the whole Jesus was stoned and hung on the cross and nails and whatever. And he was dead. And after 3 days, he rose. You could see the guy moving under the sheet. And Christopher wasn't sure about all that either, because the conversation, the way the preacher was talking was devil and death were having a conversation. And I don't remember the devil being part of the story that I heard, but whatever. I've even asked other people, and that's the first time they heard that. So that was our experience last night with the church. That was Christopher's first experience in the church, and he has questions, but he doesn't agree with what he heard. But he does want me to get him a children's. But he tried to read the Bible while we were sitting there. He's like, "Where's the beginning?" Because it doesn't start off like a typical story. And so he flipped back. He's like, "Wait, that's the title page." And so he kept flipping. He's like, "Where's the beginning?" I'm like, "This is the beginning." He's like, "But it starts with great something or other." And so then today at school, he tried to read a student Bible, and he said it started out with "they were loved." He's like, "Who are they?" So he wants me to get him a children's Bible so that we can look through it and I can answer his questions. Not sure how that's going to go either, but he's curious, so I'll answer his questions and hopefully he'll make an informed decision. All right, so man, I think I'm already 8 minutes in again. This is a long vlog, but I had a story to tell, and I can ramble. So that was our interesting event last night. All right, so I got the paper clay, and I said that I would show you all my first attempt at sculpting. Well, do you remember the first attempt at sculpting the paper clay face? It looked like a voodoo doll. Alright, well, I was not happy with the way she was turning out. So I balled it up. I wet my hands a little bit because it had started to dry, and so the paper clay was starting to feel a little crusty. Just a tiny bit where it had started to dry in the air. So all I did was wet my hands. They were just barely damp. I wet them and shook them off so that they were damp, and I rolled the paper clay in my hand, and it got re-moistened, and it was just like I hadn't even messed with it. So I went back and I reshaped it. I did not sculpt a face into the paper clay because I just wasn't liking the way the sculpting was turning out. So all I did was model a face shape with a neck, and then I attached some paper clay hair to it. And this is my first sculpture. She's got a little chin, but no face. But she's got cute hair. She's got long, flowy hair. And the paper clay, when it dries, it is so lightweight, and it's really hard though. But it seems fragile. Like I'm afraid it's gonna break. I'm scared to sit this anywhere. I have to sit it on the edge because her hair hangs down past the base of her neck. So I have to sit it on the edge of a table or something so that her hair will hang down and her head will still sit flat. But it dried in just a few hours. Down at the bottom, it was thicker, and it took it a little bit longer right here at the base. But it was dry before I went to bed last night, so it only took it 6 hours or so to dry. But it's hard. But it feels so flimsy. I mean, it doesn't move or anything, but it's so thin and light feeling. I'm afraid I'm gonna break it, so I have to keep being really careful with it. So that was that. That's the paper clay. I like it a lot, and I think I'm going to be able to do a lot with it, especially since I've practiced a little bit with the Sculpey as well. So remember I got the free thing of Sculpey? Well, I went and played with the Sculpey after I did the paper clay, and these have been baked. So if you've never worked with Sculpey before, you bake it. This is very hard now, and I don't think it would break because like I'm squishing on it now, and it's dirty. Oh, that's such a bad view. I'll show you that side in a minute. So this is my Sculpey face. This is my very first Sculpey face. I didn't give them eyes, but I did give them a nose and protruding lips, and then the neck and a base. So that's my first Sculpey face. This view, not so cute. Anyway, this is my second Sculpey face. She also has protruding lips and a nose, but no eyes, because I think I'm just going to paint eyes on here. I'm going to see how that goes. But I went and I bought more Sculpey. So when you bake Sculpey, I don't know if you can tell it on this video, but it darkens just a shade. So this is still soft, pliable Sculpey. And see how soft this one is? My other one was not nearly this soft. I couldn't. The reason why people have square heads is because the Sculpey was so hard. I couldn't round it. I couldn't shape it into a ball. I had to just keep working this as best I could and hope for the best. But I really like the way the shapes turned out on the heads. I really like that head shape. I think I may do more of those. But this Sculpey is the new Sculpey that I just picked up, and it's like really, it's really soft. I bought more Sculpey, and it's just, the baked one is just a tiny shade darker than the unbaked, but it's not enough to really affect anything. But I did notice it. So, I mushed about my husband, I told you the church story, and I showed you my Sculpey faces. And I know I'm probably over time and I'm going to have to edit this. But vlog day 16, yeah, I think, yeah. Part 2, part 1 and 2 are done, and I will see you tomorrow. I think I'm going to paint on my faces. And I'm also working on my Wild Precious 52 pages Regenerate page. So, mwah, bye.